thought we would have a little fun and read her book, one of her recent books, The Snowbirds. And so we are going to discuss that with her. And if you all have questions that you want to ask, you can raise your hand using the Zoom's raise hand, or if you feel more comfortable, you can pop it into the chat, and Christy and I will keep an eye, like how I just assign things to Christy when she's makes me do stuff too.
What I'm here for.
If you feel more comfortable putting your question in the chat, by all means, go ahead and do so. Welcome, Christina. How are you doing this evening?
I'm good. There's a big storm coming through. I just saw lightning. So hopefully everything will hold up.
Yeah, it's been stormy throughout Wisconsin. If you feel like it, put in the chat what city or town you're calling in from or zooming in from so we can see. And Christina, where are you this evening?
I'm in East Troy, Wisconsin. So it's near Lake Geneva.
Nice.
I'm in a little cabin.
Super. So why don't I guess I'd like to just start by asking you, Christina, to maybe tell us a little bit about just the story itself, like the story idea, particularly the Palm Springs and Madison, Wisconsin snowbirding idea. It's based on a real place. Just to go ahead and tell us a little bit about it.
Well, it's kind of funny. It was sort of my idea. Like I knew I wanted to write about Palm Springs, and I was hiking a lot during 2020, and we spent a lot of time in Palm Springs. So I thought that would be a good thing to write about. But then I was on the phone with my editor. I had actually started writing a book that was set in 1926 in Lake Geneva. And I was really excited about it. My agent loved it. My editor loved it. But my editor ran it up the flag post, and I sent her about 50 pages because I didn't want to write a whole book and have it get rejected, because a bunch of my friends had that experience. And I was like, I'm such a slow writer and it's such a torturous experience. I was like, it's kind of nice when you get to the point where you can just send your pages and be like, this is good so far, you know? And
Yes.
and she forwarded it to the other team. And a lot of people don't realize when your book gets acquired, it's never just by your editor. It's a whole team has to, at the big publishing houses, they have to meet. And she got back to me and she said, we love this. It's great, but we don't think the market that we've cultivated for you, your readership with the first two books, is historical fiction. That's kind of a whole different market, a whole different readers. And they're like, so maybe you can pivot to historical fiction for your fourth book. But for this next one, she's like, I'll buy a book from you, but I want it to be something more contemporary so we can have a call and go through ideas. So my agent was like, that's so weird. I've never sold a book without even the idea. She's like, let's just run with it. I was like, okay. And it's funny because I was happy, but I also was nervous. I was like, wow, this is just, it's kind of fun to have an idea and like have something you worked on and you get excited about it and you can share it with your editor. And here I just was like, had a call with her. So we got on the call and I just love my editor. She's her name's Sarah Canton, and she like edited, she discovered Taylor Jenkins Reid. She edited The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. She has like a million bestsellers. She's really, really savvy she thinks a lot about the market too. So anyway, I had a call with her and she said, well, I know you spend a lot of time in Palm Springs and I'd love for you to set a book there. I don't feel like I've read very many books set in Palm Springs, and it's such an interesting place. And so that was great because I already had an idea for a book set there. And I kind of wondered, and this is probably not fair to wonder, but I wondered if she like didn't want me to become too much of a regional writer, because the next thing she said was, you're really good about writing a contrast between places. So it'd be great to write a contrast between Palm Springs and another place. So I swore I would never write about Madison. I don't know why. All of my books start out in Evanston, Illinois. Every single one of them, the characters live in Evanston, and then I just can't carry it. Like for whatever reason, I've never lived in Evanston, but it seems to me like with The Second Home, I wrote about Evanston because I wanted to write about Milwaukee, and Evanston felt similar. And then as soon as I decided to put it in Milwaukee, the book just fleshed out. Like I could picture these characters. And then when I was working on this book, I thought, well, I'll just try Madison, once I couldn't get Evanston to work. And the minute I did, I just started having fun with like the Priuses and I knew my character would work for a nonprofit. The other reason I really liked writing about Evanston is because Palm Springs is very like, people are more promiscuous. It's very like out. I don't know if any of you have been to Palm Springs, but there you can walk down the street and there are men wearing pink tidy like undies, and tutus and like, it's just so I thought I don't want to spend a lot of my time writing a book where people are conservative and having a really hard time adjusting because there's just too much, to eroding their Midwesternness. So I thought if they're from Madison, they'd get there and they'd be pretty open to everything that they see. But it's still a very different sensibility than the one I have and many of you have coming from Wisconsin. So that's kind of how the book, came along. And then as I said, I just hiked all the time and I was obsessed with like what happens that's bad when people go hiking and the
Did you
story.
hike? Have you hiked in the area around Palm Springs?
Yeah, I was during 2020. My husband tore his Achilles tendon, so he can't really hike that much. He tore it years ago, but it didn't recover very well. So I go by myself and I would I would hike. I'm like Forrest Gump when I hike. I don't know what it is. Like I love the sound of my feet on dirt. I love like just going and going and thinking. And I usually don't listen to music or anything. I just that's kind of when I germinate ideas. And I'm kind of a daydreamer, spacey person anyway. So hiking's great for me. I'm just la la la. And occasionally I'll look up and I'm like, wait, where am I? you know, and and it's weird in Palm Springs because so many people do hike and when you're in Palm Springs, you can't avoid seeing the mountains. Like they're everywhere you look, but it's the steepest incline in the United States. So they're very, very tall. The mountains are. So you definitely get like go from 0 to 60 fast. And you just when you're in Palm Springs, you never think anything can go wrong because Palm Springs is so pretty, it's so lush. And then to think that the mountains are right there and like there could be all kinds of danger. And so when I was hiking, I started researching like at night when I couldn't sleep. I was having like hot flashes and stuff, so I couldn't sleep very well for about that year. So I just Googled missing hiker Palm Springs. And if you're ever bored, like if you have the same problem, it's pretty interesting. Like so many people go missing hiking. It's not even a crazy story. Like people can have heart attacks, they can have trees fall on them, like all the stuff I wrote about in the book. So it was just my big challenge was just thinking, okay, if my guy goes missing, what happened to him? And I never know. I don't outline my books ahead. I'm like, did he skip town? Did he embezzle money? Did he have a lover? Did he get lost? Did he get lost? Like it's that straightforward. So it was kind of fun to write because it was a mystery to me the whole time.
Oh, interesting. I love it. And so how far through before you or where were you in the writing process when you were like, okay, he's gonna get lost?
Not till the very end. I actually wrote multiple versions of the ending.
Mhm.
So have you guys read to the end? Can I tell you what the ending was going to be? Or should
Yes.
I not do
I feel
that?
like this is a book club, and so spoilers should be allowed, regardless of
Okay.
what you've done in your progress.
So you guys can tell me what you think of the ending I had.
Oh, goody.
So the book really started out, I was a professor at Beloit College for a decade. And at the time I was working there, it was really struggling, like a lot of small liberal arts colleges were. And also we had this president that was investing in a $60 million athletic center rehabilitation. And so there's all this stuff going on. And I was like, what would happen if the college actually closed and there was a $60 million athletic center and then I'd walk around the campus thinking about what it would be like closing, and it's very haunting to think of all the activity and all the life in a college and all the stories people have and and how meaningful it is to so many people. So the book really started out as an academic book. It was me exploring Grant, struggling with the idea that the college that he loved, the career that he'd put so much time and effort into could just end. And then this like the sense that like, what does a philosophy professor in his 50s do for a second act? There's just not a big demand for philosophy professors. And if you're tenured, that gets tricky. So the in the end of the book, what I had written is Grant was hiking. He's upset because he and Kim were having issues, and he thought Kim didn't want to be married to him anymore, like or get married to him. So he was hiking, he went back, he found out that his car had been stolen. So then he's stuck up there and a truck comes by, and the truck driver's like, I can give you a ride, but I'm going to the other side of the mountain. And he's like, you know what? Take me with you. And he just ends up, he has no phone, no money, and the truck driver loans him some money. And he goes all the way back to the college, which had closed. And then Kim's dad was alive still in the version I had. And she sends Kim's dad to the college. And there's the building that he works in, and there's a big snowstorm, and there's one light on. And Melody like flies her out there on her private jet. And Melody and Kim's dad end up together at the end too. Like
Oh, wow.
yeah, this is really different. And then Kim and Grant have this like come to Jesus moment where she's like, you've got to like figure out like the college is closed. It was kind of like, when somebody dies, you kind of almost need to see the body to accept, like Grant just needed to see the college closed in order to move forward. So that was my ending. And my editor just was like, I just don't think we know what colleges are going to look like when this book comes out, because books are finished and then they don't come out for a year and a half later. And she was like, I really think this needs to end in Palm Springs. And I liked my ending, but I also liked it ending in Palm Springs. It gave them a reason to be there. Palm Springs kind of won. I kind of wanted the Midwest to win in my version because I love the Midwest. And if I had to choose between the Midwest and Palm Springs, I think I'd pick the Midwest because it just feels more like home. Um, that's a really long answer, but
That's a
that's
good answer, though. I mean, I was very curious how it all comes about. And, when you said that at the end, it reminded me that she did ask you to write a book set in Palm Springs at the very beginning. So maybe it's not so surprising. And what a dramatic ending that you had to switcheroo. It's a
yeah.
lot of changes right at the end.
And that was very unusual. With my other books, my editor is very much like, you're the author, like whatever you want, but with this one, she was on maternity leave the whole time I was working on it. And then she came back and she was like, great, I'm back. We're going to publish your book in February of 2025. And I was like, what? Like, I thought it was 2026. So then we just had to do everything really quickly and so she was a little bit more forward with her ideas about what the book should be, which is kind of fun. It's like, it's story's a story, right?
Yeah,
It's
for
how you
sure.
tell it.
Yeah.
I think that was
Christy,
great of her actually, because that saves you so much time writing. You'd be writing in the dark and not knowing what it is she actually wants. If she's just forward with it, then at least you can, let the ideas marinate a little bit and see if they're to your liking.
Yeah, that's true. It's a weird thing, like creative ownership over a project. People, I think I got used to letting go a little bit when my first book was optioned for film, because you realize like other people get involved in a creative process, and it's okay but I would not, if I didn't like the book, I wouldn't have published it. I would have said, no, let's wait. It's your name on it. You have to promote it. And if it's something you're embarrassed of, like, could you imagine anything worse than like having a book out there for thousands of people to read and like you don't like it? You're not excited to tell people?
Love it. Yeah. I think I want to
Oh,
love it.
yeah, exactly.
Right. You're going to be
Christina,
talking about it for years too. So
Yeah,
you really have to, you can't cringe every single time someone brings it up.
right. Yeah.
there's a question in the chat. I'm going to read it to you. It says, I loved the voice of Polly, Kim's mother. Maybe a little harsh, but grounding. She dies, and as I continue to read, Cassie seemed to fill in the void left by Polly. Cassie
Oh,
steeped in woo-woo new age, but a particular kind of wisdom like Polly. Did you imagine Cassie kind of balancing the loss of Polly's voice with Cassie's? And Cassie is her favorite character, by the way.
I
oh,
really
that's
loved
a
Cassie too.
really That's one of the more interesting questions I've had about Polly and Cassie. I've never thought of those two together, but it is interesting. Like the reason Polly is the way she is because she's like a lot of mothers of that generation. I mean, I don't know about you guys. My mom was like, get over it. You're fine. And it's funny. I was just talking to a friend of mine from high school today. We had a really long conversation and we were talking about how different parenting is now and how our parents were just busy. And she was talking about this horrible thing that happened to her. And she said, my parents never really even talked about it. You just went on with your life. I probably had PTSD. I probably could have used therapy, but I just like kept going. And so I think Polly has that kind of attitude towards when things happen, you just move forward. It sounds harsh when like Polly sounds harsh, but I actually kind of like that way of moving through life a little bit. Like I kind of like the idea of like being tough and resilient. And you don't hear about that a lot in our culture. I think we could have a whole like resilience movement started here. And it's not that I'm cold or indifferent to what people go through, but like life is challenging and a lot of stuff does come your way. And so I like Polly being like that. And then Cassie, she is kind of like that for Kim. I think I wanted Kim to be a little bit of an empty vessel. I wanted her to be someone I was reading a lot of fiction where I felt like the female characters were like way too quirky. And I was like, I just want someone who's kind of like almost boringly normal, someone who's asking a lot of questions, who's anxious, like seeking, but not really knowing she's seeking. And so I think Kim going to Palm Springs and meeting Cassie I wanted her to have this kaleidoscopic idea of like who all the people were around her and how was she seen by other people. Like, do you ever have that where you go somewhere and people like make observations about you and you're like, I didn't think that was about us. And especially about relationships. Like the whole book I thought would have been really fun to write if Grant was missing. And the whole thing was told just by the people who met them at the
Oh,
Coco or
that would be, yeah,
yeah. I mean,
that would be fun trying to
I
piece
almost
him together.
Totally, yeah. And then you just like get like, Thomas and Raoul, what did they think of Grant and Kim's relationship? And then, Cassie was a really interesting example of a young woman trying to make sense of things. And she was super fun to write. And she is so much like so many people I meet in California. Like the sound baths are a really big thing. Like people are so much more spiritual and you just especially in Palm Springs, people go there to heal for whatever from whatever they need to heal from. So she was fun to write.
Hmm.
But I'm gonna be thinking about that question. Thank you.
That was a good question. I like the idea of having a resilience movement.
Yeah.
Just a good
We're all over
reminder that,
that. We're all
yeah.
over that. Um, I don't want to, I ask too many questions. I'm going to be quiet. You guys talk.
I want to know your question.
Oh, Christy, you haven't asked anything tonight. Go ahead if you've got
I
one.
know, but I normally, okay. Hold on. Lisa says, I liked how you introduced the pre-Palm Springs timeline chapters with the first time Grant ran away, the second time Grant ran away, etc. Did you discover this idea while writing, or was it intentional from the start?
No, the structure of the book would almost sent me to an early grave. Like it just was like okay, so I studied with Rick Moody a long, long time ago. And he said something that really messed up my writing in the best way. And I should write an essay about this because I've talked about it a few times, but it was so interesting and it might be helpful for you guys are all writers, right? So like something to think about with your writing. So he was saying that backstory, like you shouldn't have backstory, that a story should only move forward in time. So it really screwed up my writing for a long time to write like that. And then, but it improved my writing because it made me very aware when I did use backstory of when I needed to have the backstory. So whenever I do have backstory, I feel a little guilty. Like I shouldn't be telling the past. The other problem with backstory, and I see this a lot when people send me drafts of their writing, um, is oftentimes the backstory in a book is not there for the reader. It's there for the writer. because as a writer, you need to know the story in order to tell it. And so sometimes you are just writing it for yourself, so you know all these things. It's like doing those worksheets and stuff that people do to get to know their characters. So I really consciously try not to use very much backstory. But writing this story, I just was like, how do I not incorporate backstory? Because if my reader's going to care at all about what happens to this couple, they kind of need to know what their history is. So then I started lacing in some of those, like those stories from the past of how they got to know each other, got to know how they met, that horrible situation where she finds out that she's pregnant and Grant runs away, all that. Um, and then I'd put it into I'd have several paragraphs, and all of a sudden I was like, wait, where were we in the story? Like I have to go back and figure this out. And I was like, if I'm confused, the reader's going to be confused. So I started giving myself permission to just write separate sections with the backstory, with the story of Grant and Kim's love story, right? Like how they met, the problems that they had, the issues with Grant when he would kind of disappear, and Kim, and also Kim. Like I didn't want Kim to be, every couple I know, it's never one-sided. Everyone has a part to play in a relationship. So I wanted Kim to also, and people don't like Kim because of that section where she throws the key, but I needed to make Kim relatable. I needed her to have some issues. So anyway,
They don't like her because of which section?
when she throws men, especially when they read the book, when Kim gets upset when Grant buys the house and he wants her to move with him, and she takes the key and she throws it into the lake. I think
Yeah.
people think that
Oh,
Kim's really mean. Like men really
interesting.
don't like that section. They're like, I like couldn't stand Kim when she did that. And I was like, well, they both, and I kind of understand why she would feel that way, and
Yeah.
she probably regretted it later. Anyway, so I had these back sections, and then my editor and I were kind of working on the structure, and then we just it kind of has a 1 2 3 1 2 3. It's like a waltz, right? Like it's they arrive in Palm Springs, and then they're leaving Madison, and then they're the past, and then they're back in Palm Springs, and I don't know. I have to go back and look at how each chapter is. It was excruciating. Like I would take the chapters and put them on the floor. I had post-it notes. I'm generally not a writer who works like that, And then one of my friends read it, and he was like, the novel feels like a Rubik's Cube. And when you write like that, you take a big risk with readers, like some people don't like the sections that happen in the past.
Yeah.
Some people like going back to Rick Moody. He likes like one streamlined story that's just like a rocket ship taking off, and I've read books like that, and they're very propulsive. And so you have to make each section propulsive, and cause the reader to care enough about the story to want to go back to the part where Grant's missing and will we find him? Like that essential question that's driving the narrative.
I would think the reliance on backstory is just whether or not the story you're writing needs it, and I can't imagine a family drama or a drama about a couple, like you said earlier. How do you convey that without having a little bit at least? I felt it was very organic. I didn't notice it, which is, you know what I mean? Like I'm
Oh,
always
that's
trying to
good.
notice. Well, and I didn't notice the first time Grant left, the one comment that somebody made that when it seemed like, the first time Grant left was the section, and I didn't notice that at all. And so that's actually a good sign to me.
It's
It just flowed right through.
yeah. It's well, and also my editor made an observation. She said, with Grant leaving, like he didn't, none of the times he left are really like on the face of it that big a deal. Like if you had a friend who had a spouse who did that, it wouldn't seem like that big a deal. But when you've been married for a long time, those things add up. Like you kind of sometimes like focus on these little slights, like these little things someone said that are part of a bigger picture or that tap into your anxieties.
Hit you right in the spot and make you cling to them forever.
Yeah, yeah. And
I
by the
could see
way,
that. I could recognize that.
it's really hard to write a book about a couple. Oh, the other thing my editor said when she bought the book, she was like, I would love to have you write a book about a marriage. And I was like, okay, because I've been married for 31 years now to my husband, and he's great. And it's hard when you write about a marriage, because I was like, I don't want people to think this is my husband. So I had to actively imagine the partner as somebody totally different than my husband, And I knew that when I published it, people would still think it's my husband. It's totally not. Like I imagine Kim being very different. I imagine the husband being different, but you feel like you're like sometimes I do mind the stuff that would, that would drive me a little crazy, like fixing up the house or, disagreeing on how to spend money on a house. Like all those things, you can't really resist putting some of that in, like the
Sure.
socks tumbling out of the dryer, you know.
But
Very
that's
realistic.
universal. That's not every marriage experiences that, not just yours. So if or mine or Luella's or so, to say, oh, that must be your husband, that's pretty myopic.
Yeah. Oh, believe me though, I get that all the time.
So someone put in the chat that Diana said, I was worried that Grant, after doing his meditations, was going to decide he didn't want to marry Kim. At the same time, she was ready. So thank you for not doing that.
I thought about that. I thought about doing it where Grant was the one to back away.
Yeah,
I really was
was
hoping.
Oh,
Go ahead, Diana. Sorry.
I was just
Go
gonna
ahead.
say, I was so worried like she was gonna read in his journals that after doing the process Cassie set for him, he realized it wasn't right and that's how it was gonna end, and she would never know where he was. She just knew she loved him and was ready, and he was gone. So
Oh,
That's an ending I would have loved to write. Like I did not want to have a happy ending in the book. I don't like happy endings that much.
are your other books happy endings or?
I mean, I think they kind of end on like kind of like I feel like there's closure, but there's I just kind of think with life, like it's just so complex, and I like to have things not quite all sewn up. So but that would have been an ending I would have loved. And I also like I love the idea, and I think I like if I rewrote this book, like one thing that would be fun to write would be this idea that like and I thought about doing this, but it would have required so much work, so I would have had to change the time frame of the whole novel. But I thought, what if Grant 30 years ago had disappeared, or 10 years ago had disappeared, and then Kim is either still in Palm Springs, and every time she looks at the mountains, she just doesn't know where he is, or like, I mean, I just like in my own mind, you usually write about things that you're interested in or have questions about. I thought about that so much. Like, what if you were married to someone and they just never came back?
Yeah.
And that happens. Like that'd be awful, but there's not really that much story there, so the readers would be
Yeah.
sending me lots of hate mail if I did that.
I mean, I'm trying to picture it in my head right now. You left me a little speechless.
Yeah, if any of you come up with an idea of how to make that a story, let me know. Maybe I'll write a sequel.
Yeah. All right. So Anne in Madison says that the introduction of the character Hobie felt like a real shift, a turning point. How did this character come to your imagination, and what purpose did you want him to serve in the plot?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Hobie was he's actually kind of based on this guy that I would go hiking with. He was he's really quirky, but he was a real diehard hiker in Palm Springs. And he was the one who like we went on a hike once and he looked at me and he's like, "Could you not talk? I don't like hearing a woman's voice when I talk." And I was like, "Okay." Like but he was first of all, I wanted to have a character named Hobie because I did research in some of the old Palm Springs records, and there is this I saw some references to someone named Hobie, and I was like, that's such a Palm Springs name. Like I can just picture some kind of free spirit. And I wanted Hobie to be someone who knew a lot about the history of Palm Springs. Because I feel like so many people visit Palm Springs and claim it as their own, but it's really interesting when you have someone who's a local who really knows it. And it was intimidating writing a book about Palm Springs because I know so many people know it better than I do, but I did know it as a snowbird. So I was like, I can write that authentic experience that I had without, and I do know Palm Springs really well now, but he was great for that. And then I also we have this neighbor and he had this minor head injury, and he like can't control what he says. He can't filter it. And I was like, wouldn't it be fun if I had a character who like kind of hit on Kim, and I needed Kim to feel like pretty. I needed her to get some attention for how she looks. And sorry, my dog is barking. Um but I needed to get some attention for her how she looks. I thought, well, that'd be fun. But then to have someone who just kind of says whatever's on his mind and make her feel kind of uncomfortable would be interesting. But also when Grant was missing, I was like, oh, it'd be so fun to have someone like that just say things that are terrifying and scary and have Kim not really, like, because I thought she needs to hear from somebody that her husband's in or her partner's in real trouble. But how do I, like, no park ranger is going to really tell her the scary truth. She could look up stuff online, but it was great to just have somebody who just had no filter, just drop that, and like those things he said, I loved writing those sections where he would just talk about all the danger out there. And the guy I hiked with, he also was he like sat on a fire lookout. So he had all kinds of great information about what goes on in
Oh,
the,
wow. Those are great resources.
yeah, yeah. I could never imagine writing a book using AI. All your best material comes from the people you talk to,
Yes. All right, here's from Sue. The happy ending was appealing. So many different personality types getting along and respecting each other. I particularly enjoyed the conflict in Kim's mind about keeping herself and her identity within the relationship and her partner and with her children. Grant walking out when the twins were little and when Kim was feeling overwhelmed made me not like him. Then you brought out good things about him too. Was that hard to balance, the good and the bad about Grant? It seemed like Kim put up with more than he did in the relationship. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that it was really hard to write Grant in a way that I was really worried when the book came out that people would be really mad at Kim if she liked Grant. Like if he was that bad and she stayed with him, it makes you not like Kim because you're like, you're an idiot. Like this guy is like, it makes her unlikable. But I don't know. I know so many women who are just with men who have lots of really great things about them, but that just aren't like all 100%, I mean, and I think that the same could be said with women, with men, but I just thought it'd be interesting to have Grant have issues and like not fully having worked through them, but for Kim to think, well, this has been frustrating for a long time. But, a big question in the book is, can we change? Like, can we get to midlife and can we be different? Can our partners improve and have experiences that make them more appealing and likable to us? And he has lots of qualities that she really likes. I just think they also, it's not that he's necessarily so bad. I think they got off to such a bad start. I think a lot of times the way things begin, like, have you ever heard that phrase, begin as you wish to carry on? Like the beginning is like the seed from which the future, scrolls, comes out of. And so I just thought it'd be really interesting to have this couple have a really rough start and never quite ever work through their issues. Grant has them, Kim has them, so it was really hard to balance their flaws. So just if you write a relationship story, just know that's going to be hard.
I could see that. And I mean, I suppose depending on a male and a female's version might or answer to that question might be quite different as well. I don't know.
Yeah, I sometimes will have book clubs with just men, and it's so interesting. Like shoulder season I've had a bunch of book clubs with just men and they just see the book so differently. And The Second Home, like that is a devastating book for men. Like they read that book and they, like my friend Chris, he's like this big burly Chris Fink. I don't know if you guys know him. He's a big writer in Wisconsin. He's like, I cried 7 times. I counted, and he's like, I just love that character, Ed. And that Ed is my favorite character, the dad, but he really relates to the dad. So it's just so interesting to see what men pull out of a book versus women.
Mhm.
And I think men might side more with Grant. I don't know.
Yeah. It struck me because when you said that you had some male readers that were like really upset with Kim when she threw the keys in the lake. And my first thought when you said that was like, well, I could see that if that was out of the blue, but it wasn't. It was after she told him that she didn't want to move 87 times.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think they missed that part.
Right.
Anyway, sorry. I don't want to make it a male versus female
And
chat,
it's
but it
also
just
just hard. Like life is like it's just hard when you have two people living in kind of separate, like you're pulled in two different locations. Like they never really lived in the same city because he had his job, she had hers. Like it was easy to kind of be apart. So like geography was a really big challenge for them.
yeah, for sure. Sylvia asks, you really nailed the difficult task of creating a character out of a setting, both the Wisconsin college, which feels like a ghost, and
Mhm.
Palm Beach, which feels like a new friend. I agree with that's a great characterization. How have
Aw.
readers reacted to your portrayals and befriending of these locales?
I think that they really, I mean, I was really worried that the Madison readers would think that what I wrote about was kind of a stereotype of Madison, you know, with like the Willie Street Co-op and the Prius, but it's truly my experience. You like I look around and I'm like, it is, Madison is what it is. And I love what it is. And it's changing. And I think that like my friend grew up in Madison and she'll always say, back when Madison used to live up to its reputation, you know? And so I think like a reputation of a place can be a pretty authentic portrayal of what it's like there. So I love Madison. So I wanted to like show respect for the city, like they live near a nature preserve. They, they care about the environment. They are around smart people. Like Grant is jealous of the guy who has a doctorate or who's teaching at UW. So I thought that was kind of fun. And then the Palm Springs, it's always nerve-wracking when you have a book come out because you're like, oh, I hope I didn't get any of the details wrong. But I only would write about things that I knew the details were correct. And it's just so fun to write about. It is like a new friend. I love that description. I'm going to be thinking about that too. It's so joyful and complicated and interesting. And I think the thing I love about Palm Springs and my experience there is that we live in this condo complex called the Coco Cabana, and we call everyone the Coco Nuts, and it's such an interesting place because there's all these wealthy people moving to Palm Springs, but in our complex, so many of the people have been there forever or they've inherited their condo from their parents. So they're like a lot of them are not rich. They can barely afford the HOA fees that they're charged every month. And then there are people who kind of are rich who kind of want to come in and they want to change everything and make everything fancy. And then you have the tourists, like the Canadians, who actually spend more time there than the residents because they rent the places for the whole winter and they have all these sets of friends and habits, and they put out the Christmas ornaments and stuff. So it's just a really interesting, varied experience being there with different people, and they don't always get along. In fact, most of the time they don't. But one of the guys in my condo complex went missing for 3 days. And so I forgot to tell you guys about that. Yeah, he was in his 70s and he and another guy in the complex went for a hike, and only Roger or only Gord came back, and Roger was missing. They thought for sure he was gone, like that he would never be found or that he had died because of his age and because it was really cold. He'd slipped down an ice chute, and
Oh.
everyone in our complex, like that's one of the things I loved about writing the book is the stories of how these people that don't always get along, they suddenly really cared. Like everyone was totally focused on searching for Roger, finding Roger, having meals, making sure that his wife Sheila was taken care of when their kids flew in, like they took care of them. Like, I love the community that you don't always see until you need to see it.
I liked that a lot about the book, about the premise of the book was that you got to have that little palm, the La Desert, La Desert.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
hilarious name a little, that made me laugh.
Yeah, if you Google, there's a hotel called Lake Cactus, and I mentioned it in the book. And that was originally I was going to have the complex look mid-century because that's what people think of when they think of Palm Springs. But I personally love the Spanish colonial architecture, and I'm crazy for so Lake Cactus. I was there and I was like, oh, this would be such a great environment because it's so cloistered, with those tall walls around it. And then there's also another hotel called the Colony Palms. And that's where we used to stay when we first went there. And it got bought out. It's super expensive now, but it was kind of more shabby when we were there. And it's just like a little community. And that also, like the people who owned it were the owners of Seabiscuit, the racehorse. And there are
Wow.
all these mafia tunnels. And that's what got me interested in Palm Springs history.
Wait, Mafia Tunnel, she throws out. What?
Yeah, no, there's all these tunnels. There's a whole network of tunnels underneath Palm Springs. that
Okay.
all the mafia would use to transport liquor during Prohibition. And if you're at the art museum, that's where most of the tunnels would come out. And so I mean, just thinking about that was so fun to like imagine what Palm Springs was like at that time.
No kidding. Okay, I have a
Need of a
question.
train spring.
Was a reminder whether Snowbirds was written as omniscient narrator. I think it was, wasn't it third person close between the two or no? What?
It was third person.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was third person close. And yeah, I don't think that ever varied. No. Sorry, I was so focused on Snowbirds for a minute. It was third person,
Yeah.
and I wanted actually both my first and my second books were first person. And
Ah,
I went back and forth between third and first on Snowbirds a million times. I actually kind of wasted a lot of my time I had to work on the book doing that because I was trying, and I recommend anyone try it, with something you're working on, because I think it helps you find the voice of your character by writing in first person. And there's pros and cons to both. Like I feel like when I write third person, my writing's more elevated. Um, like you can be more fancy, but you when you're in first person, you're so limited to the dialect that and that your character has. And you can get really suffocated by a character writing a whole book in first person because like that's your brain, and you have to see the world through their eyes exactly. But I wanted to write with more humor. And I had written a lot of short stories before I wrote novels, and most of my short stories had humor in them. And my first two books were kind of serious. I mean, there's little jokes in them, like people can see if they're reading them. But I was like, oh, I think in first person, I could just make more of those little like asides and use humor more. So that's why I use first person.
and then Anne also just wanted to mention that acting out the comments from the Willie Street Co-op with the puppets was really great as
Oh
well.
yeah,
Like that was a really funny reminder. I'd forgotten all about that.
yeah. They don't do it anymore, but they should really bring it back. We
They
should
should.
we should,
Yep.
we should make a comment card saying that.
Yeah. And Diana, this is a really good question, I think. Have you seen a difference in how Palm Springs residents reacted to the book compared to Wisconsin residents?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. I mean it's kind of funny because I was in Palm Springs for a bunch of book events when the book came out. And I think people find it really validating to be on vacation and be like, "Oh, there's a book that's set here." So I think they like having a book set there, but then they also you want to make sure you don't screw up anything with it, because if you have a detail that's wrong, you lose all credibility with your reader. Like if you have the wrong detail on page 7, like the wrong highway or whatever. um but I think the thing that surprised me the most about the way people received it in Palm Springs, and it's so weird, it's mostly Midwesterners in Palm Springs. I had an event at the Palm Springs Library a year ago because, shoulder season is set in Palm Springs also just a little bit. So the library invited me to do an event, and the whole audience was people from Madison because it said in my bio that I was from Madison. And I was like, I didn't know all of you people were here, and you just, they're Canadian, they're Madison, they're from Michigan, Indiana, so a lot of people are just like us. And my friends in Palm Springs are like, yeah, you guys are the reason all the food here is bad. It's because they make the food they think Midwesterners are gonna like.
Oh no.
Yeah. So it was actually, in a way, it was kind of like the same experience. But I guess I'm just really shocked at how many people go to Palm Springs, have been to Palm Springs, um, who've read the book. I think they like that they can relate to both places. You can't
I
really be in
bet,
Palm Springs
particularly
without thinking of other
snowbirds.
places. Yeah, it's too hot in the summer. Like most people don't stay there all year. So most people have a second place.
Yeah.
Can you talk about the process of the cover design?
Yeah, I love talking about the cover because I'm friends with my cover designer. And I don't know, I met her when she designed the cover for the second home. And if you've seen it, Christy, do you mind holding up the second home again? Like now we've seen lots of books that have covers sort of like that. But this was the first one that, you know, at the time it just seemed like a really different design, and I was so excited about it. So when I went to New York, I had a meeting with my publisher was really excited about the second home, and it was like their big lead title, and they were doing all this stuff and sending me on pre-tours, and so they flew me to New York, which they don't usually do, like that's unusual. And so while I was there, I met Olga, and she had just had a baby, and she had like totally wrinkled clothes, and she looked really tired, but she's still super beautiful. And I was just like, I don't know why, we just like right away, I was like, I like her. And so we started becoming friends on Instagram. And then like the book with the second home, like then you know, it came out during COVID, and it was really hard to break out a new book during COVID because you know, people were buying books by writers they already knew. So it's kind of, you know, they pulled back a little bit on some of the initial stuff, but it still did fine. But anyway, and then so Olga and I, then we were working on Shoulder Season, and if you don't mind holding that one up, Christy, um, that was a really tough cover because it's literary fiction, but the publisher wasn't sure if like if readers would think that Playboy bunnies were like lowbrow, like that it was really interesting, the conversations about that. And that's why I wanted to write about Playboy bunnies, because they are so interesting, and they're always treated in media like they're trash, you know, and like how, and it's women who talk about women that way. You know, it's just I wanted to kind of validate their experiences. It was so interesting, like to live in Wisconsin and work as a Playboy bunny. And I'd talk to anyone about that experience. It was fascinating. So, but they didn't know how to market it because and I would have people tag me all the time on Instagram when it was first coming out, like, oh, I'd read that, but it looks like trash because it's about Playboy. It was really weird. So they didn't want, my publisher wasn't sure about, they were like, well, for the hardcover, we'll experiment and have it look like it's a Playboy bunny. And for the paperback, we'll do a different cover to see if it reaches a different market. So it was interesting working with Olga on that. We both had pretty strong opinions about it. And then with the third book, I was working on it, and, you know, I was telling you, I had a deadline, so I was like writing right up to the end. And Olga one day sent me an Instagram, and she was like, "This is the artwork, and they're gonna buy it, and it's gonna be your cover, and I love it." And I was like, "I can't look. It's like going to the gift store before you've been to the museum, you know, like it's." It's too fun, you know. I was like, it's not, you know, but it is interesting to work on a book when you and see the cover at the same time, because then you're like, okay. And and she puts all these extra things into it because we're friends, like the green and white stripes on the side of that. That's from the
Oh,
Colony Palms. Like she had seen the awning of the Colony Palms in one of my posts I had on Instagram, and she was like, "That's going to be in the book." And
oh, wow.
yeah, she really goes that extra mile for me. I thought that cover was fantastic. The only thing is the book is darker than the cover. So I think readers sometimes
That
are
was
like,
my question. Yeah.
yeah, they were like wrong bill of goods. But as a writer, you have no say over it. And honestly, if the cover gets the book into more people's hands, I mean, I'm the kind of person who would be happy if a book was a little darker than I thought it was going to be, if I thought it was
Same.
light. But it's like I would never have had a choice to change that cover anyway. Like Olga was so excited about it. So
What are you writing now?
I'm working on a book that I'm actually like, and I'm taking it really slow. I've been really busy this summer too. But I've never written about Denver, and I'm from Denver. So the story kind of starts there, but it's about a woman who had to make a choice, and like she gets to see how that choice would play out in either, like if she made it one way or if she made it the other way. It kind of reminds me a little bit of that book, The Names. Did you guys read that about the woman who's taking her child to be to have his name registered, and her husband wants him to be named after him, but he's a jerk. And then her daughter wants it to be named the Bear, which is the name she came up with. And then the wife had her own idea of the name. And then each chapter shows like what would have happened if the name was different. It's really good. It's by Florence Knapp. So it's kind of like that, but I'm in early stages, and then I just got another idea for a book that I was really excited about yesterday, and I started doing some research. So I might just like put this one aside, and I don't know. I'm having fun though. I'm so glad I can just have fun writing again.
I'm glad too. It's always a great problem to have too many ideas than not enough.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know like you feel like the brass ring, like the thing you're going after when you publish a book is to have a book actually get published, and people want that so badly for themselves. And I totally get it. I was the same and I still am. Like I want to publish whatever book I write next, but like sometimes you kind of forget. And I tell people when they first get a contract for a book, I'll say like write a little like note to yourself of what success would mean to you right now. Like what having that book, like what would count as success? Because the minute you have a book out, the bar keeps changing. Like the Snowbirds did hit the USA Today bestseller list, and then it came out one week, and then I was like, oh, but what if it doesn't come out the second week? Or it doesn't hit the list the second week, and and you just can't do that. You'll never be happy. So I think knowing what makes you happy is important, and then also like you just kind of realize the fun part is like meeting other writers like you guys and working on a book, and even the stuff that feels like agony when you just can't decide something, it's part of it's like doing Wordle and you don't know what it is, but you're like you want to figure it out. So I'm really like trying to just get back to loving the process, because I kind of I was working so much on the deadline that I lost sight of that a little bit. So I'm just like, I'm very selfish about the process now.
I bet, especially after book 3. I mean, now you've really seen a lot. We really
Yeah.
have some preferences about the way you work, right?
Yeah. Well, and also, I mean, it was so weird because my first 2 books came out during COVID. So I had, that with publishing, which was kind of a weird experience. So it was fun, at least with the Snowbirds, that I got to go on tour and, have lots of events. But even that, like that's when you go to a bookstore or something and you're like, what if nobody shows up? And that happens all the time. People don't go to book events a lot. When you go to a book event, the writer is so happy you're there, and
Mhm.
I never regret going. So um, but it just like it made me aware of that.
Yeah. Sylvia asked, do you feel the audiobook captured the mood you wanted to convey?
Yeah, yeah, I like my audiobook narrator a lot. Carissa Vacker is so talented. She does like that Laura Dave book, The Last Thing He Told Me. Like she's done a
Mm.
lot of those great books. And I thought she was so good with Shoulder Season. So I asked to have her do this book again. I actually had Annalee Ashford she's like a Broadway star. She was supposed to be the narrator for the Snowbirds, and then Broadway opened up again, so she had to cancel. So then I was like, oh, Carissa Vacker, but she was so good. I was like, oh, I think she's really great. And who knows, like she'd never narrated a book before. It could have been a disaster.
Wow. And Sue, okay, Sue would like to know, how do you balance writing, promoting, and having a life?
Oh
Big
yeah, it's
question.
well right now I have a life because I'm just kind of working on a new book, and it's kind of slowed down all the promotion stuff. I was super busy on like February and March. I felt like I was on a treadmill. Even in April, there was just so much going on. And now I love this kind of like quiet time. And I don't know about you guys. I need like extreme quiet when I write, like whole days without seeing another person to like really start getting into a book. And even I'll spend a whole day, like today I didn't really write very much, but I was thinking about it, and so I love that. But I was just thinking this morning, the hardest thing about writing for balance for me is like the days go by so fast. And if you want to exercise or something, or like take your dog to the dog park or meet a friend for lunch, it's really hard. And one of my friends was like, if you really want to be a writer, you have to say no to things. And so sometimes I'm in a phase of my life where I'm like, I just really want to get this book done. Like when I was working on Shoulders or the Snowbirds, I said no to everything for about 6 months. I couldn't do anything. I remember all my friends would meet up and I'm like, I can't, I've just got to work. I was working 12 hours a day. Um, and then sometimes you just are like, you know what? I like the story, but I'm not going to work on it today. And there's also like nice things that happen when that story is like getting macerated in your brain, like you might not even be thinking about it, or somebody says something and it's nice to just be taken into a different, world, and it informs the work. in a way you might not expect. So
Thank you for
Percolating. I
saying
always think of
yes.
that. Oh, sorry, Christy. I didn't mean to
Thank
speak
you
over
for
Go
saying
ahead.
yes to the WWA conference.
absolutely. I love WWA. And I remember I was hoping to get invited last year, I think, or 2 years ago. And I was like, oh, so I'm thrilled. It'll be really fun.
Well, we're at the top of the hour. Any last minute questions? Otherwise, I think we're gonna wrap it up.
Oh,
This was amazing. Thank you.
oh,
I wish I
thank
were
you for
sitting at
having
your
me.
house. Okay.
You wish what?
I was sitting at your house at your cottage with you.
Come out here. We'll have a writing retreat.
Okay. Yes, Kim, she will sign books at the conference. Whoop, whoop.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm really excited to see everyone in person. It's going to be so much fun. And Stevens Point is great.
It's so
And
great.
yeah, we can go out for
It's
drinks
gonna be
and
fun.
talk writing.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
So
All right.
All
Thank
right.
you so much.
Thank
Thank you,
you, everybody, for
thanks, everyone. Good
coming.
luck with your writing. See you later.
Bye-bye. Have a good evening.
Bye-bye.